Hey guys, hope you had a good Sabbath, good weekend. This week we're gonna start talking about the war on Earth. Whether you know it or not, we are in the middle of a war, and so over the next few lessons we're gonna start kind of focusing on this before we get into the tribulation. Quick mapping of the book of Revelation here. So you see, chapter 1 was an intro. 2 and 3 messages to the churches. That was kind of our marching orders per se from Jesus himself. And then chapter 4, we saw the King, our God, the one who we serve up on his throne. Then we get into the tribulation starting at chapter 5 through 14. Chapter 12, 13, and 14 are seem to be kind of happening at the same time as chapter 5 through 11. That's kind of why I have them there on the chart off to the right. So we're going to kind of read all those together as we go through the tribulation. And then after that, you get into Jesus returned from chapter 15 through 20. And then chapter 21 gives us the end goal, heaven. And chapter 22 is a conclusion. So there's kind of an overview of the entire book of Revelation. The big question Christians always wonder is, where's the rapture? Well, as I mentioned before, there's three theories. There's the pre-tribulation theory, which will put the rapture right before the tribulation starts on the top there. There's the mid-tribulation theory, which will put it sometime in the middle of the tribulation. And the last one is the post-tribulation theory, which will put it after the tribulation, coupled with the return of Christ, which happens after the tribulation. So where I think we are today, 2023, in our lives, I think we're right at the beginning of the tribulation, if not the birth pains for it. If it is the pre-trib rapture theory, I think it should happen any moment where we are there. And this is, again, in my opinion. We can talk more about that when we meet, but my opinion, this is where we are. Kind of like to live, and this goes back to my just my Marine Corps training and all. The idea of hope for the best, plan for the worst, kind of how I like to live. So, of course, the best is a pre-trib rapture that happens anytime before the tribulation starts. That's the best case scenario. We're taken out of here. We don't have to worry about the tribulation or any of that. However, I do like to plan for the worst, which would be a post-trib rapture after the tribulation coupled with Jesus' return, in which case us as Christians would have to endure through the tribulation. Now, we are called to endure. I want to make it clear, as Christians, we're not called to fight. We're not called to fight in this war. We're going to talk about this war and where the fighting is happening and who's involved in the fighting. For Christians, we are called to endure. One of your homework is going to be to read Matthew chapter 24. And there Jesus gives us, the kind of the warning of what's coming and what he wants us to do. And what he wants us to do is endure to the end until his return. So got to kind of plan for that. Enduring is not easy. It's going to be hard, and it's something you have to give thought to and plan for, if indeed it is a post-trib or even a mid-trib rapture. There is some kind of preparing you have to do for that. It's definitely, number one, spiritually, mentally, and then there's probably some practical things you need to do as well. So we'll get into that over the rest of the school year. Here's what we've covered so far, what's lined out. 1 through 4 we already covered about the pre-trib rapture, and then we kind of jumped ahead, covered what heaven was like in our last lesson, just to kind of see the end goal. You want to have the end goal in sight, know the end from the beginning. So that's kind of what we've covered already. So we're about in this class to enter into the tribulation. So with back to my Marine Corps training, here I'm going to put my Marine Corps officer hat here. So in the Marine Corps first, the Marine Corps does this really good, has it down to a science, where first they make you a Marine. They make you a Marine and you become a Marine. This is totally on them. All you have to do is step forward, kind of show the willingness to be a Marine, and they take over and they make you into a Marine. Then Next step is they teach you your trade. They teach you your weapon system. They teach you whatever your job is going to be. And you go ahead and you learn it. You study your weapon system. You become an expert in it. Um, and then when a conflict presents itself, we then shift to studying the enemy, knowing everything about the enemy, how he ticks, what his motive is, what motivates him, what's his organization, what we call center of gravity is, which is basically his strength, the thing that makes him a threat, and he knows it. And also his critical vulnerabilities, which is what are his weaknesses, what are his gaps, where can we get to him where he's weak. So that's kind of what I want to do as we before we get into the tribulation is kind of use that approach. We became Christians. Jesus did the work, right? We stepped forward. We show our willingness to follow, to have faith. He took over. He made us Christians. Then we've learned how to be a Christian in our time with our families, our church, even in this class, as we read chapter 2 and 3 of Revelation, it went through that and the messages from Jesus to the churches, how he wants us to, prepare and be a Christian. Now, before we get into the tribulation, we get into a step where we study our enemy. There's a couple chapters in Revelation that gives us very good insight into what the enemy is like. Chapter 12, 17, and 18. So over the next 3 lessons, I kind of want to focus on those chapters and really get to know our enemy and how he ticks and how we can endure. Okay, another thing we study in preparation for a conflict is who are our allies? What's our same thing? What's our allies' motivation? What's their strength? What's their weaknesses? That stuff. How can they help us? And how can we combine to focus on the enemy? So, I'm gonna read through Isaiah chapter 14. Gives information about our ally and a lot of information about our enemy. So, starting off in verse 1. We get the Lord will have mercy on the descendants of Jacob. He will choose Israel as his special people once again. He will bring them back to settle once again in their own land. And people from many different nations will come and join them there and unite with the people of Israel. The nations of the world will help the people of Israel to return, and those who come to live in the Lord's land will serve them. Those who captured Israel will themselves be captured, and Israel will rule over its enemies. So it's very important to know that in enduring through the end times, through the tribulations, Israel is an ally. It says the Lord will, and you're going to see this, where the Lord will keep bringing people back into Israel. The Jews will go back into the land. It already started after World War II, where they got their land back. People have been slowly going back to their land. They've had a lot of conflict since they've been there, but they're still there. So conflict going on right now, which I'm sure you guys are aware of. This is all supposed to happen. It's all part of what's been prophesied. And it's very important as us Christians that we realize that Israel is our ally. The Jews are our ally. We should never be against the Jews. We should never be against Israel. And, if you have any Jewish friends, get to know them, get to learn about the Jewish culture, Jewish way of life, their religion, read the Old Testament, get to know Torah, learn about their festivals, know about our allies. These guys are our allies, and we should not. The enemy has done a very good job over the last, couple thousand years to keep us separated. Remember, he is smart, and he knows that Christians and Jews shall be allies because they're the people of God. And he has purposely, think about it, he's purposely kept us separated over the last 2,000 years. So let's beat him in this game, right? Get to know Israel, get to know, know Jewish friends, know about them and all that, and, be friends with them. Don't go against them. So that's very important as we get into the tribulation, to know what side that you're on. Okay, the enemy. Let's go ahead and talk about him. Okay, verse 3 says, "In that wonderful day, when the Lord gives his people rest, from sorrow and fear, from slavery and chains, you will taunt the king of Babylon." I want you to remember that term Babylon. Talk more about it in the next lesson, but Babylon is associated with the enemy. So for now, just remember Babylon. We'll talk more about it. "You will say, the mighty man has been destroyed. Yes, your insolence is ended, for the Lord has crushed your wicked people and broken your evil rule. You struck the people with endless blows of rage and held the nations in your angry grip with unrelenting tyranny. But finally the earth is at rest and quiet. Now it can sing again. Even the trees of the forest, the cypress trees and cedars of Lebanon sing out this song. Since you've been cut down, no one will come again and cut us down." Okay, so the enemy here, we kind of get what he's been doing, right? He has struck us with endless blows of rage. He's held the nations in his angry grip with tyranny. So, I mean, you just look back at history and you can see the history of, of the world and all the tyranny that's been constantly coming into the play, all the wars that have happened between nations, between people, and it can all go back to our enemy. It's probably safe to say that he's kind of behind all of it. As we get into verse 9, we see where he's going to end up at the end. It says, "In the place of the dead," which we learned about last week, "there is excitement over your arrival. The spirits of world leaders and mighty kings," interesting, "long dead, stand up to see you. With one voice they all cry out, 'Now you are as weak as we are. Your might and power were buried with you. The sound of the harp in your palace has ceased. Now maggots are your sheets and worms are your blankets." So world leaders and mighty kings are excited over his arrival down in the place of the dead, down in Sheol, Gehenna, the places we talked about in the last lesson. Why are they the ones waiting for him, right? It says when he gets down there, when he gets thrown down there, they're going to say, "Wow, now you are as weak as we are." So they knew him. They knew he was the one causing all this tyranny and problems. And obviously they ended up down there, these leaders and mighty kings. And when they see him arrive, they're going to be like, "Ha, now you're just as weak as we are." It makes me think, the Satan is his, I guess is his order of play is to go after the leaders and the mighty kings. If you think about it, that's how you get the most influence over the nations and over the world, is to go after leaders and mighty kings and try to influence them. So maybe interesting thing to talk about that we could talk about while we meet for a discussion on Wednesday. Then we get kind of his background. In verse 12, it continues saying, "How you are fallen from heaven, O shining star, son of the morning. You have been thrown down to the earth, you who destroyed the nations of the world. For you said to yourself, 'I will ascend to heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountain of the gods far away in the north, and I will climb to the highest heavens and be like the Most High.' But instead you'll be brought down to the place of the dead, down to its lowest depth. Everyone there will stare at you and ask, 'Can this be the one who shook the earth and made the kingdoms of the world tremble? Is this the one who destroyed the world and made it a wasteland? Is this the king who demolished the world's cities and had no mercy on his prisoners?'" So, fallen from heaven. So we see where Satan came from. He came from heaven. He fell from heaven. Interesting, in the prophecy is referred to as a shining star, son of the morning. I don't know, maybe it tells us something about the heavenly host. And it says he was thrown down to earth. But what we get most importantly in verse 13 and 14 is we get his motive. We get what it is that he wanted that caused him to fall. It says, he said to himself that he would ascend to heaven and set my throne above God's stars. I will preside on the mountain of the gods far away in the north. Talked about that mountain in the last lesson, in the north. What's in the north? I don't know, but it keeps coming up in prophecy. And it says, I will climb to the highest heavens and be like the Most High. So Satan wanted to have a throne, and he wanted to set it above God's stars. Now, is this the stars we see in the sky? He wanted to be above them. Does it mean he wanted to be up in the third heaven? Or does it mean he wants to rule over the stars? What's the deal with this mountain of gods far away in the north? You know, is there some mountain up there and he wants to put his throne on top of it to kind of rule over the world? What are the gods? Mountain of the gods? Are those angels? And he wanted to be like the Most High. He wanted to be like God. So here we get insight into what caused Satan to rebel. I think as Christians, we all know Satan rebelled and he's the enemy. That's clear. That's not what I'm trying to show you guys. I think you guys already know that. But here we're trying to see what caused him to be bad. Why did he rebel? You know, what was it? And he wanted to be like God. He wanted to rule over the stars. He wanted to have a place of authority on top of the mountain in the north of the gods. Whatever all that means, he basically wanted to rule, and he was not allowed to. He wanted to be like God. So that's important to know as far as his motive. Then this further message came to me. Now this is to the prophet Ezekiel. So the previous one was to the prophet Isaiah. Ezekiel also got insight into Satan. Ezekiel was told, son of man, sing this funeral song for the king of Tyre. Okay, so file that in your brain, king of Tyre. We'll get back to that. He said, give him this message from the sovereign Lord. You were the model of perfection, full of wisdom and exquisite in beauty. You were in Eden, the garden of God. Your clothing was adorned with every precious stone. Red carnelian, pale green peridot. There you got all the stones. I'm not going to try to read them all. It's a tongue twister. Then he was told that in reference to Satan, they were given to him on the day he was created. So Satan was created. I ordained and anointed you as the mighty angelic guardian. Okay, so he was a cherub. He was an angelic guardian. He had access to the holy mountain of God. Okay, it's that mountain again. And he walked among the stones of fire. So here we go. Satan is not ugly. He's a model of perfection. He was full of wisdom. He was exquisite in beauty. Okay, so he wasn't this, I don't know where they get the whole pitchfork, horns, red with the tail. Don't know where that comes from. But when he was created, says here, he was exquisite in beauty. He's full of wisdom. He's smart. Okay, he's not a dummy. Satan knows what he's doing. And we get here's where we get the clue that he was the one in Eden in the garden of God. We'll get to that when we talk about the fall of man, but he was there. And, he was created. So it's, some people think, oh, it's God versus Satan, and, where does Satan come from? I kind of put Satan level with God. Don't do that. That's what Satan wants, right? He wants to be like the Most High. But one important thing to remember is Satan is created. God created him. So God is above him. And as much as Satan thinks he's on par with God and level with God, he's not. He is created. God is the creator. It's important to know that because you learn that he's not like God. He's not everywhere. He's in one place. Satan is in one place. He's not all-knowing. Yes, he's full of wisdom. Yes, he's smart, but he doesn't know everything like God does. So he's not all-knowing, and he's not all-powerful either, like God, right? He has limits to his power. So, hopefully this kind of motivates you a little bit. Like, Satan can be beaten. He's not all that as he portrays that he is. He was blameless in all he did in the beginning, right? You were blameless in all you did from the day you were created until the day evil was found in you. So he did have a free will. Angels do have free will. Okay, and one day evil was found in him. It says, your rich commerce led you to violence, and you sinned. So I banished you in disgrace from the mountain of God. I expelled you, O mighty guardian, from your place among the stones of fire. Your heart was filled with pride because of all your beauty. Your wisdom was corrupted by your love of splendor, so I threw you to the ground and exposed you to the curious gaze of kings. There it is, to kings again. You defiled your sanctuaries with your many sins and your dishonest trade. So I brought fire out from within you, and it consumed you. So maybe this is where we get the idea of Satan, kind of being on fire. Probably comes from that prophecy. I reduced you to ashes on the ground in the sight of all who are watching. All who knew you are appalled at your fate. You've come to a terrible end. So the end has been proclaimed on Satan. Now, again, he was blameless when he was created. He has free will, and he chose to sin. And that is what caused God to banish him from, again, the mountain of God. He was expelled as a guardian from his place. And it said that his heart was filled with pride. So there's another clue to the working of our enemy. Pride is usually associated with him. And his pride was because of all his beauty. So again, he's not this ugly monster looking thing. He was actually a beautiful angel. But the end has been declared for him. So that's kind of the background of our enemy, how he was created, how he rebelled, what caused him to rebel, and kind of, where he's at right now, right? So the next part of this lesson, I'm going to go over what we like to call the road to war. In the Marine Corps, when we're about to go on a deployment or some conflict, they give us the road to war brief, is what it's called. And it's basically, before we go into a theater, it's a background of what's going on, who are the parties, what's the history that has led to this point of conflict, right? Because war doesn't just start out of nowhere. There's always a background. There's always a leading up to it just kind of blowing up. So let's go through the road to war here on what has led to, or what is leading to, the tribulation. So there's kind of the steps, the causing of the fall of man, the Watcher incursion, the Tower of Babel, Satan being the accuser of man, his multiple attempts to annihilate Israel, his attempt to take out the Messiah, and this great battle against Michael and his army. So going through the first one, the causing of the fall of man, a review. You all know the story in Genesis chapter 3, how the serpent basically tempted Eve and kind of deceived her. Eve knew not to eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil in paradise, in the Garden of Eden. But of course, Satan, and Eve said it. Satan asked her about it, or the serpent asked her about it, which we'll see when we get to chapter 20. Satan is called the old serpent, or the devil, referring back to the garden. But Eve told him. God said, you must not eat it or even touch it. If you do, you will die. And his reply was, you won't die, right? So here we get a little bit of Satan's tactics. He's a liar. From the beginning, he lies. You won't die. And Eve was convinced, and she ate from the tree. And we know what happened after that. Mankind fell. She gave it to her husband. He ate from the tree, and so sin entered into the world, and voila, here we are today, thanks to this first event that happened. God, in response to this event by Satan in causing mankind to fall, is he declared war on Satan. So here we get the declaration of war back in the garden. In verse 15 of Genesis 3, God said, I will cause hostility between you. He's talking to the serpent. I will cause hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. This verse, Genesis 3:15, is important because the entire chapter of Revelation, chapter 12, is based off of this verse, all the way back in the beginning, Genesis 3, when God officially declared war on Satan for causing mankind to fall. Okay, that leads into the Watcher incursion. This might be something you're not too familiar with. Genesis chapter 6. You go back and read it. It talks about the sons of God, which basically they created this race of giant Nephilim. How did they do it? Is they had intercourse with women, and the women gave birth to children who became the heroes and famous warriors of ancient times. So I want you to do a quick, just do a little research, do a little Google research on the Nephilim, and we'll talk about it when we meet in person, okay? Just search up what were the Nephilim. Who were the sons of God in Genesis chapter 6? And then the question or the issue for discussion that I want to ask you guys when we meet up is, do you think Satan had a play in their sin? Now, in Genesis 6, there's no evidence of Satan. Basically, these angels, these sons of God, on their own accord, wanted human wives and mixed with the humans and created this giant race of Nephilim and all that. But could it be that Satan was behind it? I don't know. That's going to be our first issue for discussion when we meet up for our discussion this week. All right, going on, the Tower of Babel. So this story you guys might be familiar with. In Genesis chapter 10. There was a man by the name of Nimrod. Nimrod, in chapter 10, it says he was the first heroic warrior on the earth, greatest hunter in the world. I don't know what made him greater and stronger than everybody else at the time. That's something we can talk about. Maybe going to have you do a little bit of research also on Nimrod. Google him and see what you can find. But what's important is he built the kingdom in the land of Babylonia. Okay, so remember I told you, like, keep Babylon in your mind. You're going to see that the enemy is constantly associated with Babylon. Well, Babylon was created by this man named Nimrod. This is right after the flood, when people kind of moved to the Mesopotamia area, and they settled there, and then this Nimrod rose above all. He became a conqueror, and he created a city. In the next chapter, it says there in the land of Babylonia, where he created this city, is where they built this tower. The people said, come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. And then you guys know the story. God destroyed the tower. He scrambled the languages. And then the people from Babylonia then spread throughout the world because they couldn't talk. And so from Mesopotamia, people went to all the different nations where they are today. So what I want you to do a quick research on Nimrod. Who was Nimrod? And then the issue for discussion, I want to ask you guys, like, what do you think was so bad about the building of the Tower of Babel? So we'll talk a little bit about that, So you read it, you could be like, well, what's so bad? The people came together. They worked together. We'll talk about that. And again, do you think Satan had a play in their sin? Do you think he had a play in the Tower of Babel? Again, Satan's not mentioned. You're going to see common themes. Satan kind of works in the background. So I want to discuss, what do you guys think? Do you think he had, maybe, I don't know, did he have a play in the Tower of Babel? Okay, accuser of man. This we kind of know, right? In Job chapter 1, we get the story of Job. There was a day when the sons of God, there's the term again, used in Genesis 6. In Job, sons of God is angels. So maybe that helps us understand with Genesis 6 that it was angels that came and mixed with women to create the Nephilim. But anyways, with Job 1, sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. So here we go. Here we get some insight into Satan in the scripture. The Lord said to him, from where have you come? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth, and from walking up and down on it. So Satan had access to this council of angels. He also he's free, right? We've talked about this. He's not in hell yet. And he's going to and from all over the earth. And the Lord said to Satan, have you considered my servant Job? That there is none like him on the earth. He's blameless. He's upright. He fears me, and he turns away from evil. And Satan answered him and said, does Job fear God for no reason? Have you not put a hedge around him and his house and all that he has on every side? You've blessed the works of his hand, his possessions have increased in the land. Stretch out your hand and touch him, and take away everything he has, and you'll see that he'll curse you to your face. So here we get kind of a Satan's thought process, right? Sure, Job loves you, God, because you protect him. You give him everything. You make him successful. You make him prosper. But I guarantee you, you take that stuff away and he'll turn on you. And that's what Satan does, right? He believes that us as mankind, we only love God when he's good to us. And when he turns against us, or when things aren't going well for us, we turn against him. I hate to say Satan's not wrong. He's right. So what that tells us is he knows us. Satan knows how we tick. He knows how to get us. He knows how we are. He knows our sinful nature. He knows that, I just got to make things go bad for them and they'll turn on God in a heartbeat. I hate to say he's winning in this part of the fight. He does it. He even does it with Christians and with the people of the world. If he makes the world bad, if he makes it horrible, if he makes it evil, if life sucks, we will turn against God and blame him for it. And all you gotta do is just look at the news and you can see it. You can see it among people around you, that God keeps getting this blame for something that he's not doing. It's something that we're doing. And Satan is just fooling us in doing it. And it's a sad thing, but it's something we gotta become aware of as Christians. Okay, we gotta become aware of this tactic of the enemy, especially as we get into the tribulation. It's just going to be exponential, where the whole world will turn against God. So as Christians, you got to be aware of this, because you'll see when you read Matthew 24, even the elect, even we can get deceived with the deception that's coming. So make sure you're strong in your faith. Multiple attempts to annihilate Israel. We see throughout the Old Testament, there have always been an attempt to take out Israel. The first one was with Pharaoh back in the Exodus. This Pharaoh that kind of ruled Egypt and enslaved the Hebrews who were living there. He made an order that every son was to be cast into the Nile. Then we get to the story of Moses and all that, and how God delivered them from Egypt, from their slavery to this Pharaoh. In 2 Kings, we get the story of Sennacherib. He was the king of Assyria, and he just hated Israel for no reason at all. And he just wanted, as king, to just invade Israel. And he succeeded. He actually displaced 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel, invaded the entire north, got all the way up to Jerusalem, and then the Lord intervened. It says the angel of the Lord went out and struck 185,000 in the camp of the Assyrians in one night. And then the next morning, Sennacherib tuck-tailed and ran back to Assyria after his entire army was literally annihilated. So we see a pattern here, right? The enemy acts, he tries to take out Israel, and then God intervenes. We saw it in the Exodus. Sennacherib tried to take out Israel, God intervened, took out his army, he tailed back. The Maccabees is not in our canon Bible. It is an Apocrypha. It's in the Catholic Bible. It's a good read, though, if you want to go and read it. But there's big story. There was this man named Antiochus Epiphanes. He was a Greek. During the time that the Greek Empire broke into 4 kingdoms. And just like Sennacherib, for no reason at all, he just hated Israel. He hated them with a passion. And he went and he wanted to annihilate Israel and force them to eat pig, which was unclean. He set up an abomination in the temple. He basically wanted to destroy their religion, their customs. And God helped these brothers, the Maccabee brothers, and the Maccabean revolt to pretty much overthrow Antiochus Epiphanes and reestablish Jewish worship. So that story is in the book of the Maccabees if you want to go ahead and read it. But it's again the same pattern. A king, a ruler, rises to destroy Israel, and God intervenes. So it makes you think about kind of what's going on right now in the world. The target is always Israel. And you can always, that's always a way to looking at history to see where the enemy's at. Satan doesn't just come out and openly and be like, here I am, I'm the bad guy and I'm attacking this guy. No, he's kind of always behind the scenes. That's how he works. It's smart of him to do that. But you could always kind of see where's Israel and who hates Israel. Satan's probably has something to do with the one who hates Israel, right? Nero, Hitler. We can talk more about them when we meet for discussion. Okay, right, to not be too long-winded here, he attempted to take out the Messiah. We find, and the great battle against Michael and his army. We find this in Revelation chapter 12. Short chapter, I'm going to read through it, and then we'll discuss it when we meet. Verse 1, I witnessed in heaven an event of great significance. I saw a woman clothed with the sun, the moon beneath her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant. She cried out because of her labor pains and the agony of giving birth. Want to hear what you guys think who is this woman? What do you think is the significance of the sun, moon, and the crown of 12 stars? We'll discuss that when we meet up. Verse 3, then I witnessed in heaven another significant event. I saw a large red dragon. Okay, we'll talk about that. With 7 heads, 10 horns, and 7 crowns. I want you to remember that. In the next lesson, we'll talk about that. The 7 heads, the 10 horns, and the 7 crowns on his head. His tail swept away 1/3 of the stars in the sky, and he threw them to the earth. He stood in front of the woman as she was about to give birth, ready to devour her baby as soon as it was born. So, who do you think this red dragon is, right? Think we know the answer. What do you think the stars are? The 1/3 of the stars that he threw down. And when do you think this event in Revelation 12 happened? So we'll discuss that when we meet up. Verse 5, she gave birth to a son who was to rule all nations with an iron rod. And her child was snatched away from the dragon and was caught up to God and to his throne. And the woman fled into the wilderness where God had prepared a place to care for her for 1,260 days. Okay, so it should be becoming obvious who the son is, right? Who was to rule all nations with an iron rod. That's a prophecy going back to Genesis 49. Prophecy given about the tribe of Judah, how the scepter would not depart from Judah until the coming of the one to whom it belongs, the one whom all nations will honor. We know Jesus was from the tribe of Judah. So the scepter, belonged to him as king. In Psalm 2, same thing. The Lord said, as a prophecy, the Lord said to me, you are my son. It's a prophecy to the Messiah. Today I have become your father. Only ask and I will give you the nations as your inheritance, the whole earth as your possession. You will break them with an iron rod, there it is again, and smash them like clay pots. This is why, the Pharisees they mistook Jesus on his first coming, because a lot of the prophecies are about him smashing the enemy, breaking him with an iron rod, being a king, being a conquering ruler, which he is, and he will be on his second coming. But this is what was expected on his first coming. So when he came as a suffering servant, he was misunderstood as, no, he can't be the Messiah. He ain't smashing them like clay pots, right? So there you go. Satan Revelation 12 attempted to take Jesus out at his birth through his life, but he failed, and Jesus was caught up to God's throne. The funny thing is, Satan probably thought he won when Jesus was hanging on that cross. He probably thought, victory. I got him. I took out his son. Until 3 days later when Jesus rose, I could imagine, what Satan was thinking on that 3rd day when Jesus broke out of his tomb. Love it. Or when he saw Jesus on his ascension day, on his 40th day, rising up in a cloud to heaven. I love it. That must have just upset him even more. And it did. Continuing in Revelation 12, we get to verse 7. It says, then, so after he tried to take out the son of the woman and he got caught up to the throne, then it says there was war in heaven. So Satan was enraged. He saw Jesus resurrect. He saw him ascend, and he was just enraged. And it broke out into a all-out war in heaven. It says Michael and his angels fought against the dragon and his angels. So there you go. Satan has angels at his disposal. Are those the 1/3 stars that he threw down? Verse 8, and the dragon lost the battle, and he and his angels were forced out of heaven. Meaning Satan had access to heaven still. Now here we go. This great dragon, the ancient serpent, here's where I told you, I think I said chapter 20 earlier, sorry, I meant chapter 12, misspeak. The ancient serpent, so that refers to the garden, back in Genesis 3, called the devil, or Satan, comes out and calls him. So Satan is the great dragon. He is the serpent. He is the devil, right? And we'll talk more about that when we meet up for discussion. I don't know, is this guy a shapeshifter, or are these just kind of ways to refer to him, his personality? I don't know. We can talk about that. But we do know he's the one deceiving the whole world. He was thrown down to the earth with all his angels. So I want to ask you guys, when do you think this battle actually happened? This battle we're reading about in Revelation 12. Main thought is it happened before the creation of the world, before the garden, all this. But as you read Revelation 12, it seems to indicate it happened after Jesus was caught up to his throne. So after the resurrection, after the ascension. So I want to hear your thoughts on that. And what was the result of the battle? Verse 10, then I heard a loud voice shouting across the heavens. It has come at last, salvation and power in the kingdom of our God and the authority of his Christ, for the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to the earth, the one who accuses them before our God day and night. And they have defeated him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony, and they did not love their lives so much that they were afraid to die. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who live in the heavens rejoice. But terror will come. Okay, here's the tribulation part. Terror will come on the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to us in anger. After this battle, he got kicked out of heaven, him and his angels, indicating he has no more access to heaven. So he's kind of imprisoned down here on earth with us, down in the earth and the sea, and he has anger, and he knows that he has little time. He knows the end that's been declared to him in Isaiah 14. He knows his time is running out. So think about it. Somebody who knows their time is running out, knows that there's no hope, is filled with anger and rage, and knows that he is failed. What is he going to do? He's going to want to go out with a bang, right? Hence the tribulation that's coming. Verse 13, when the dragon realized that he had been thrown down to the earth, and he pursued the woman who had given birth to the male child, Mary. But she was given 2 wings like those of a great eagle, so she could fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness. There she will be cared for and protected from the dragon for a time, times, and half a time. So kind of interesting. We don't really know what happened to Mary. So maybe do a quick little Google search on what do you think happened to Mary. This will be a quick discussion. Just kind of want to hear what your thoughts are. I don't know. Couldn't find much on what actually happened to Mary. How did Revelation 12 play into Mary's life after the ascension? Then the dragon tried to drown the woman with a flood of water that flowed from its mouth. But the earth helped her by opening its mouth and swallowing the river that gushed out from the mouth of the dragon. And the dragon was angry at the woman, and here we get a second declaration of war. And he declared war against the rest of her children, all who keep God's commandments, Israel, the Jews, and maintain their testimony for Jesus, Christians. So here we go with a declaration of war today. So the first one was back in the garden. God declared war on Satan for what he did in causing mankind to fall. Now, after this battle, Satan declares war not on God, but on Israel, the Jews, and Christians, those who keep God's commandments and maintain their testimony for Jesus. So like I said, whether you know it or not, you are in the middle of a war. You have a big bullseye on your back for maintaining your testimony for Jesus. And this enemy out there has declared war on you, so that you know. Then the dragon took his stand on the shore beside the sea. So Not sure exactly where that is. What sea is that? What shore did he take his stand? I don't know. But I do want to discuss with you guys, where do you think he is today? In 2023, where do you think Satan is today? He's still around. Where is he? How is he operating today? What do you think is his center of gravity? Like, what is his strength that makes him a threat, that he knows makes him a threat? And what do you think is his or are his critical vulnerabilities? What are his weaknesses? Where can we capitalize on enduring his scheme? Because he does have weakness. He's not God, right? So that'll be probably our biggest topic of discussion when we meet up this week. I look forward to it. Go ahead and read Matthew 24. It's a warning from Jesus about the tribulation that's coming and how we are to endure it. And then do your quick Google researches on the Nephilim, Nimrod, Tower of Babel, maybe whatever happened to Mary. Probably doesn't have much bearing on the war going on, but kind of a cool thing to talk about as well. I'll see you guys then. God bless.